making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome. This is the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I'm Alrik the founding host of the podcast, and I'm a sci-fi horror filmmaker. And my first feature film, The Alternate, will be coming out on September 13th.
I'm Liz Manishal. I'm a writer, director, producer who has made 2 features, Bread and Butter and Speed of Life. I'm currently in development on 37 more. I'm a distribution consultant who used to manage Sundance's creative distribution initiative, and I do sales, too.
This week, we welcome prolific Bay Area filmmaker Marc Smolowitz on the show for our first ever live show of 2022. Wow, it was amazing. We talked to Marc at the first ever Bay Area Media Makers Summit in front of a live audience and talked about how he formed a sustainable career making films, how he raises his funds, and what he looks for in hiring a director. And just, he's mainly a producer. He directs too. He does other things, but he's a very prolific producer. He's produced, 50 different projects. It's insane. We also have an article from the Hollywood Reporter talking about the new Academy members that were just announced, a few of which are previous guests. What? Congratulations to all you. We'll shout you out later. We also talk about consistency in filmmaking because I want to ask Liz about this consistency thing. But first, Liz, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I guess the update to talk about is Amy and I have overhauled our horror script yet again and went back to the outline phase yet again.
Wow.
Which is amazing. And I'm feeling really good about it because we've actually stripped it of almost entirely all of the supernatural witchcraft type stuff, which always seems to get in the way for me, and turned it more into a haunted presence movie. I don't know how to describe it. It's like the presence of a traumatic event is influencing the people in the house. So it's not a ghost movie per se, but it's more of it's turning into more of a I don't even know what to call it, a homicide movie.
Oh, wow.
Where the killers are influenced by this evil, but it is a bunch of friends killing each other now. But it's now funnier because that's hilarious. And and I'm having more fun with it. So I'm speaking with this tone because I'm realizing how many times I've said on the podcast, we've changed it up. We've gone back to the outline. We've done it again. But that's just part of the process, is continuously reevaluating what your movie's about.
So is it more like The Shining then, without as many visions? Is it like that?
Kind of. That's a really good comp. I'm trying to think of Amy talks about The Grudge a little bit, though The Grudge, it's there is an entity to a degree, and I think an argument can be made that it's possessing the women in this house, but you don't ever see the entity at this moment. And we're also kind of making an analogy to infection too. It's like the infection is spreading with the possessions that are occurring in the storyline. Yeah, but nice. But now we can write more jokes about friendship, which is really fun.
That's cool. It's like The Thing without the alien.
Yeah. Without the thing, that makes it really exciting. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's funny. No, that's cool. I mean, I think, that's definitely going to make it more makeable, right? Because if you take away all that special effects stuff and it's all psychological and, then you just have to worry about the physical kills, which, obviously can get quite complicated, but it's less complicated than supernatural or ghosts or whatever other stuff.
Yeah. And I kept fighting the idea of a haunted house movie, and Amy and I kept talking about it, and I was like, tropes, we keep on falling into these tropes. I watched The Changeling last week as one of my homework movies, and it's so great. I don't know if you've seen The Changeling.
I haven't seen it. I know of it, though. I've heard it's good.
Well, and it's filled with tropes. It's filled with them, but the film still works because it's like a film with integrity. It's high production value. It's great performances. Everyone takes it very seriously. I think the tropes fail when they're surrounded by a cheapness and a lack of care and a lack of thought, right? So I have all these red flags when I write. I'm like, gotta avoid this, gotta avoid that, and I'm trying to let go of them because it's the execution that's important, not the idea itself.
Yeah. I feel like tropes are complicated because in a lot of genre filmmaking, you kind of want to lean into them and sometimes, but then also you don't want to be too tropey where people see it coming and it feels just predictable, but in a way, no one will ever admit this, but in a way, viewers want the tropes. The tropes are what makes it the genre it is. You have to have them to a degree. So disguising them and making them service your characters and intertwine with your plot, your characters, and the story you're telling movie. Like, that's the trick. It's not getting rid of the tropes. It's like disguising them and hiding them. You know, which is like sneaky, but it's cool. You know, it's fun.
No, I think it's great. And I think with my first two films, they were almost genre adjacent, right? Like we call Speed of Life sci-fi, but it's not really sci-fi because I kept on being afraid of the tropes, thinking that they were bad in some way. And so I'm learning to embrace them a little bit.
Well, some are bad, but some are good. So it's just like trying to figure out which ones are good and when they're good and when they're bad. Because like, it gets complicated. But that's what I love about genre filmmaking, because it's like this amazing puzzle, this amazing like thing to put together. Yeah. But like, you know, you can easily fuck it up. Like, you know, it's so easy to fuck up the puzzle and make it shit, you know? And so like trying to do it in a way that is like engaging and feels fresh, but isn't too, you know, is still familiar enough where people are like into it, you know? It's like, I don't know, so funny. I was just thinking, so have you seen Doctor Strange 2 yet? Have you watched that?
No, I mean, I've like walked in on Sean watching it yesterday. That's the closest I've gotten into.
So it's totally like Sam Raimi embracing his horror roots in like the biggest way. It's like they said, like, do whatever the fuck you want. And he was like, okay, I'll just like make Army of Darkness / Evil Dead 2 / other like really crazy over the top horror stuff I love, and put it in a Marvel movie and just go nuts. And I'll do all these amazing things, have all these amazing kills in this Marvel movie, and you'll let me do it because you are Marvel and you love me. And they said, okay, sure, no problem. Do whatever you want. Kill whoever you want. It's fine. And I think like I was talking to some Marvel fans when that movie came out, and they were like, oh, it's not a Marvel movie. Like, it doesn't feel like the other Marvel movies. It's too weird. It's not right. It's off. And then you watch it and you're like, oh, it's amazing. It's so much better than the stupid like sameness that all those Marvel movies have. Like, this one felt so different, and it's because he like did his thing, and like, yeah, almost to the degree almost leaned into the tropes too. Like, he like hit all the beats, had his amazing horror moments, like just went nuts with it whenever he wanted to. Bruce Campbell's it's just amazing. It's really great. So I hope you like it when you see it.
Yeah.
And I mean, Sean's watching it for a reason, because it's good.
Yeah.
Anything else going on with you, Liz?
No, I want to hear about you. No, go. Tell me you.
What's up with me? Yeah, I mean, lots of personal fun stuff. It was my daughter's birthday yesterday, so like we had a fun birthday weekend.
You survived a year. It's your birthday too. You survived a year.
It felt like another birthday. We like went to the beach, and then like, you know, when she went to bed, we like got hamburgers and milkshakes, and like we totally celebrated like it was our birthday, but we just did things with her to, you know, for her with her. But she's so young, like she doesn't care. She doesn't know.
It's another day for her. Yeah.
But we did go to the beach, which was fun. She'd never been to the beach before, so we took her to the ocean, and she saw the waves, and she wasn't too scared of the waves, so that was cool. Yeah, I'm pretty deep in it with these two editing projects. I got some big milestones on the feature, which was like really fucking with me, man, because like I did the online edit for my movie in a very specific way, which is not how everyone else does it. It's like not the way it's done. It's like not the industry standard way. It's just the way that I prefer to work because it's easier for me. But then when I tried to do that same way for this movie, it was like nothing was working. It was all wrong. And then I like talked to like the DIT, and I talked to the director, and I basically figured out like, oh, I have to do it this way. Like, I have to use DaVinci. Like, I have to follow this certain way of doing it, or it just won't work at all, you know, because that's not the way that it was set up originally. And yeah, it was so complicated, and figuring out what the aspect ratio of the movie was, because like I thought it was 2:39, it's actually 2:55. It's like, I don't know, it's really interesting. But the director and I kind of all figured it out in the last couple days, and I got DaVinci to work, and I'm using it, and it's like, oh, I can see why people like it so much, because like exporting visual effects shots was like the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. It was so much easier than doing it through Premiere. I had to do all this extra work to just get the shots to my visual effects artist, but this one, it's just like a couple clicks and it just does it for you. And I'm like, oh, wow. It's easy. That's cool. I was like freaking out because I have to get all these shots to the editor by Tuesday. It's going to take no time. Like, once they tell me that like what I did was right, and like that if they confirm that it worked, like it'll be a breeze. So that was nice. And then editing this movie has been really fun because like, yeah, it's just like a cool story, and you need to be creative and everything. And that's due like also Thursday. So like I have a lot of work to do between now and tomorrow.
Oh my God.
And then I'm going on vacation over the weekend. So I don't know. Crazy.
I'm like looking at the date. I'm like, that's tomorrow. tomorrow. You have to do it by tomorrow.
Yeah.
You will.
Yeah, tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah, you will. No problem.
I'll do it. It'll be fine. It'll work out. You know, if I lose some sleep and if I have to push back, I mean, Eric, who's the listener, who's the director, if it doesn't get done by tomorrow, like, will Eric be mad at me? Yes. Will he be rightfully angry at me? Yes. Will he forgive me? I think so. Will I be able to get it to him like early next week? Yes. So yeah, if that happened, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I obviously don't want that to happen. Like, I do think I can hit the deadline, but yeah. So I don't know. Not really working on anything for me right now. Just kind of working on these 2 projects and yeah, just trying to push things forward. I read a really great script. Oh, that meeting I talked about last week went well with that potential financier person.
Yeah.
He doesn't need me though. He's like, God, I don't know. Like his story is incredible. We should have him on as a guest at some point. But like, yeah, he like sold a movie to Netflix. Like, did this, like, made money on the sale. Actually, like, he's got connections to all these famous, fancy people. I'm like, why do you want my movie? Like, you have access to all these other people. You could work with them. That makes more sense.
Maybe he likes discovery. Maybe he likes,
Maybe.
I think people really like, quote unquote, discovery. They like to own other people and their success.
Yeah,
I think that's like joyful for others. That's totally true. That's not a joke. Yeah. People, that's the real talk right there. People like to own each other. So maybe he just wants to like pimp you out, Alrik. Like maybe that's what's going on. And I think a lot of us would be like, please pimp me. Like, go ahead.
I gotta follow up with him because like after I sent like a couple scripts and a couple pitch books over, I haven't heard anything. So like I know he's a busy guy and like, he's like flying to Los Angeles and then flying to Spain and then flying to this place. He's like one of those crazy people. Fancy people, not crazy, fancy people. So we'll see how that goes. But it was good. It was a good experience. And I actually got really depressed after it because like I realized in the meeting that like I'm not as prepared to pitch as I think I am. Like I think I could pitch to anybody anytime. Like, oh yeah, I'll just pitch, no problem. But like, I did these pitches, over dinner and it was cool. It like worked, but like, yeah, it wasn't as strong. Like I wasn't the pitch machine I thought I was, like this ability to like just wow people with my amazing ideas, like without any practice, without any preparation, just to wing it and it'd be great. Like, I have to prepare. I have to practice. Like that really, I need to remember that next time I get into one of these situations that I should put some practice time in first because it makes a big difference for me. Yeah,
but if you're like at dinner with someone and they come at you really intensely, like I've had that happen to me where someone's like, let me tell you about my project. And they have like a, memorized monologue and it's all there and there's a script to it. Like even if you weren't 100% ready, which I don't know if I believe that, you probably sprinkled enough information without overwhelming or dehumanizing the situation. Like, I think you could go the other way very easily.
I definitely didn't go the other way for sure, which is good. I think that's probably better. Like you said, like not to become a machine or like treat it like you're desperate, or like you put a lot of time. Like this meeting means everything to you. It's like you don't want to come off that way.
Right.
But I think like for me, if you put some practice in, it's not that I would practice a speech or practice a certain presentation. It's more that I would just talk about the movie to myself over and over again. Or like maybe I would read something, that's like, that I memorized, but then I wouldn't regurgitate that to them. It would just help me talk about it more like openly. Because like when I did my speed pitching last year, like that's what I did a pitch where I had a pitch written out. I did a pitch video. I practiced it. I memorized it. I like had it down. And then when I did the pitch meetings with people, these actual 5-minute meetings, like I would dip into that pitch, but I wouldn't rely on it. And I would change it depending on the person. So like depending on what they told me and like what they knew about me as a filmmaker or if they'd seen the alternate or if they hadn't seen the alternate or whatever, like I would just change it accordingly. And I think that really helped, like to be able to just wing it, but like have all the information memorized so you can like throw it into a conversation, but you're not like pitching like a song and dance number,
Yeah, so that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, but I didn't have that like comfortableness with the material that I thought I did. Like I should have brushed up on it a little bit first.
So next time.
But what you don't need to practice for, you could just go over to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/MMIH podcast and support the show if you like the show. This is the way the show keeps on going. Without this, I would go broke trying to make the show happen. So thank you all for supporting us on Patreon. We also have a lot of really fun stuff. We're actually going to have some bonus stuff around this episode. So we're going to include the Q&A and there's like a little opening prattle between Marc, Liz, and I that didn't like make it into the edit. So like those two things will be special little bonus videos that we'll release shortly after this episode, or will already be available now on Patreon. So if you want little bonus things, including our weekly meetings where Liz, Eric, and I just talk about movies and, bemoan the fact that our downloads are down lately, then you can jump on there and check those out too. Also, don't forget to check out Jambox.io, which is a new royalty-free music and sound effects company with an emphasis on high-quality cinematic cues. They offer customized plans to fit your needs, and they're just really cool people. So use our code MMIH to get 20% off of your subscription today. And without any more delay, here's our chat with Marc Smolowitz at BAMS, the Bay Area Media Makers Summit. Well, welcome everyone to the conversation. This is Making Movies is Hard, which is a podcast about filmmaking and the struggle of being an independent filmmaker for anybody who doesn't know what the podcast is. And I'm Alrik Purcell. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show. And we got Liz Manischel here coming in on Zoom. She's the other host of the show. And we're really excited to be here with Marc Smolowitz today, producer extraordinaire. So Marc, why don't you just start by giving everybody like your 1-minute bio of like your background as a filmmaker?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you to the Summit for inviting me. It's my honor to, contribute this morning. Yeah, so I'm Marc Smolowitz, and I'm a full-time independent filmmaker. I'm based in San Francisco. I've lived here for 32 years. I've always worked in the film business. I'm a director when they let me. I'm a producer all the time. I'm an executive producer sometimes, and I'm also a consulting producer. And on the consulting side of my business, I work with many filmmakers at all different stages of their career. I work from kind of like the kernel of the idea sometimes. Like I've literally jumped on movies where someone has sent me an email with a paragraph and a pitch. But I have this real sort of track record and sweet spot of jumping on movies at a midpoint when filmmakers hit a wall, either with financing or with story, or they don't know how to finish their movie, and so they need someone who has a lot of experience finishing movies. But when I'm involved as a producer here at my company, we actually manage all the worldwide film festival release. So we get the films placed in festivals, and sometimes I'm also a combined producer/sales agent. I do work with sales agents from time to time on a particular movie that warrants it. Sometimes they're the ones that can really help orchestrate the deals. But I find that oftentimes on the films I make, that I'm really the right person to wear that hat and really get the film out there and really understand how to help it meet the market. So I'm involved for the life of a movie, typically. And the life can go on for 3, 5, 7, 10 years after the film is finished. So the other piece, the part that we do very well at my company, is we manage all the rights. So it's very rare for a movie to be sold to one distributor nowadays, right? We're usually selling, by rights or by territories. So I have a film where I may be talking to sometimes 6, 10, 12, 15 companies around the world. And if I don't have a system to take care of that, I'll go insane, right? Because it's just important to have a strong back end. So over the years, my company has built the enterprise of the independent film industry and kind of brought it to films and filmmakers who are ranging from emerging to established. We have a lot of involvement in first and second time films. And the way that I describe my company is I'm extremely talent focused. So I don't really care what kind of movie you're making. I'm more interested in people. I'm open to any kind of pitch in any genre. And I've made some pretty weird movies over the years. But the way I sort of describe what gets me excited outside of people is let's make the movie that you're making and make that movie extremely well. And make that movie and that movie only, right? Let's not try to be some other movie. Let's define success together and aim high for a film, right? I always want to be the best film that we can be in the vertical of film that we're making. So if you come to me with a weird, queer, personal essay film with found footage, if I'm the right producer, I'll probably say yes, and I have said yes to that movie. But if you come to me with a wacky midnight drag queen comedy, I might say yes to that movie too, right? So it's there's a lot of different things that motivate me to say yes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. But yeah, I've been doing this thing called independent filmmaking for 32 years. It's not a part of the business I haven't touched. If you ask me a question about pretty much anything, I'll probably have a meaningful answer for you today.
Well, we're going to be talking a lot about you as a producer, but I wanted to kick off with a question about you as a director. You kind of facetiously said, when they let me, I'll direct. But can you talk a little bit more about, what are the actual factors, whether you take on the directorial position or the producerial position?
Sure. Well, thank you for allowing me to talk about myself as a director. So, I'm not sure where people are in their careers here in the room, so if I say things welcome to that. But let's do some kind of baseline definitions, okay? So the director, right, is responsible for, making the movie from the perspective of, he, she, they is responsible for everything that goes on screen, right? That's the director's role, right? Usually there's one director, sometimes there's two, but it's a singular vision, right? The producer is responsible for making sure it gets on screen, right? So that's the huge difference there. It's that gets role, right? Which is why on the producer side of a film, we have many more people involved, right? Because the getting on screen involves a lot of talent, a lot of people, a lot of resources, human resources, people who do different things. The bigger the movie, the more need for more producers who wear different hats on different aspects of the producing of the movie. But the director over here is this kind of singular person sometimes, right? And our industry is really founded on making sure that this person gets their vision on screen. And whatever you think of that, welcome to that, but that's what we do, right? There have been a few movies where I figured out that I was the right person to be that singular vision. I'm now working on number 5 and number 6 in my director's story, okay? Both are in post-production, and they've taken me frickin' forever because I'm also the producer, the lead producer on both of these movies, right? So I have other producers helping me, right? But imagine if I'm wearing both hats, right? The person who is the singular vision, but then also the person who is the lead of the gets it on the screen. So those movies tend to take longer for me because I just need my time, when I'm directing, it's like my blood, sweat, and tears that go into, bringing this film to life, whereas when I'm producing, I can produce in my frickin' sleep, I know how to produce movies, and I love producing movies, and I'm a good producer, and if you get me in your, on your team as a producer, I'll be able to really add value to that project. I'm quite confident of that. But yes, directing is a slow, kind of intentional journey for me. The 2 movies that I'm directing right now, one is called The Lonely Child, and in fact my editor just walked into the room on The Lonely Child. Hi, Michelle. She's doing a panel on equity in the edit room later today. So that film is a story about a little-known Yiddish lullaby that was written inside the Vilna Ghetto during the Holocaust, okay? And my mother and my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, so I have a very personal connection to the Holocaust. It's been a huge story in my family, and this film landed in my lap by way of a woman that I have known since I went to college at UC Santa Cruz in the 1980s. And it's a story about a lullaby that was written about her mother and her grandmother, and we always had a shared story. She and I are both children of hidden children. So our mothers were saved by helpful Gentiles. My mother was actually smuggled out of the ghetto in Łódź, and in Warsaw, and then placed in Łódź in a Christian family that saved her life. So Alex's family, similar kind of story, but her family is actually more famous and has a whole history to it. And so we are tracing kind of the unexpected footprint of this beautiful children's song in the current moment. And the urgency of the song is this kind of, we're at a moment where we are losing the last living Holocaust survivors, right? So we will never know when the last one takes their last breath, but we know that will happen soon because they're all in their 90s. Right? And so the film contemplates how can a little song remind us of this moment that we're in where something as gruesome as the Holocaust becomes like history or like memory. Like what happens to something like a genocide when there's no one left to testify to their own actual lived experience. So that's what the film is contemplating through music. The other film is called The G Word, and it is a very ambitious film I've been working on for about 6-7 years, and it's about giftedness. So gifted education in America, and I'm looking through gifted education through the lens of equity. So who gets to be gifted in America and why? And I have stories. I've done that crazy thing in a documentary where I have 7 stories, and I'm kind of curating them into one larger story, one larger inquiry, and we take you to places and spaces across this great nation where you don't expect to encounter smart people. So I have a story inside a prison, I have a story on a Native American reservation, I have a story at the US-Mexico border, I have one decidedly suburban story. We're in a very increasingly diverse county where we're looking at this sort of, what happens when suburbia becomes more diverse. And it really, the movie sort of, I was a product of kind of good, gifted education in the public schools in the 1970s, so I felt, when the film landed in my lap, I felt like I was the right person. And yeah, it's I'm editing that one right now too, and that 7 stories, it's a lot to bring into a feature-length film. The current assembly is strong in about 2 hours and 40 minutes, so you can imagine that. Yeah. But we're getting there. So that's a long way of saying that these were both projects where the passionate piece of me really clicked in. The first film I ever directed was a film called The Power of Two. I did that after I had produced a number of movies, so I felt like I was ready. I always had wanted to direct movies, and this sort of conditions came together and conspired to get me the gig, and I optioned a book and made this movie about twin sisters who were both survivors of double lung transplant. They both grew up with cystic fibrosis. They both had incredible, kind of public lives around advocating for better access to organ donation, and there was a whole part of their story that was going to take them to Japan. And so initially I was hired to go film that story in Japan, and I so fell in love with them and what we did together there that we decided to keep making the movie.
Wow.
And then it premiered at the Tokyo International Film Festival.
Wow.
And I was on the red carpet there with the Prime Minister of Japan and like the most famous person on Japanese TV, and I'm like thinking, how the hell did I get here? So I've had those moments of like, bits and bobs of experiences at Sundance and Berlin and Cannes and all the big festivals. So I have been fortunate in my career to have that kind of verification that I'm doing this right. But I also believe that we work at every level in the independent film business. I told you that I handle the worldwide release for film festivals, and as much as I value my Berlin and Cannes and all those relationships, I value all the grassroots festivals that are in the space, because most importantly, it's about getting our films seen by people, right? And very early on, I was able to kind of figure out the business of the film industry, and so I kind of got out ahead of things. I was early involved, Liz and I have talked about, in the distribution business, and all that exposure just made me a better filmmaker.
So I have 1,000 questions about you as a director, but I want to shift over to you as a producer.
Please.
And especially focusing in on producing films in the Bay Area, since we're all Bay Area filmmakers here. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear about some of the advantages to making a movie in the Bay Area, and some of the challenges that you face while trying to shoot in San Francisco, Oakland, and the surrounding areas.
Sure. So very early on in my career in the 90s, I made a very strategic personal and professional choice that what I could do well was connect San Francisco with the globe, right? So I had this epiphany that I wasn't going to be in LA, I wasn't going to be in New York, I wasn't even going to be in DC. I was going to be in San Francisco. This is where I love to live and I want to build my life. And there was a vibrant film community here. How could I build a career that connected us with the world? So that was sort of my charge, and what I figured I would sort of focus on for much of my career. And this was before, social media, before, all the things that make it possible for us to connect with the globe. So I was getting on planes and going and networking, and that exposure to the larger global film business was really the thing that got me charged to kind of make movies, because when you look to the world, the talent pool just goes wild, right? It just really does. But I love my community here, I always have, and I always wanted to find ways to keep helping this economy here develop, right? So I have this kind of mantra in my work that I take a very intentional approach to making films both locally and globally, right? We are all in this together. No one can do this alone. It's a deeply collaborative medium. Each one of us, if we approach making our movies with intention, we will meet other people like that who are in kind of a virtuous relationship with us. So that's really how I evaluate, even in the Bay Area, the films and filmmakers that I want to engage with and that I want to be in relationship with. I have a real commitment to talent here. If you look at my slate, there's always a few very strong, maybe the best of Bay Area filmmakers that I see have potential for both national and international success. That's really how I evaluate the projects that I want to produce with Bay Area filmmakers. There's always Bay Area filmmakers in my slate. I'm committed to that. I love hearing from all of you, and I may or may not be the right person to help you make your movie, but I'll certainly be responsive to you because we are in a community together. I haven't lived here for 30 years to not respond to your emails, right? So that's kind of how I roll. I say yes to these kinds of appearances because I believe that we all have something to learn from each other, to be in community with each other, especially after a pandemic. But this is an extremely vibrant community of filmmakers and always has been. We have a history of more Academy Award nominations, Emmy nominations, and Peabody nominations in the nonfiction side of the film business than any other region in the country. And that speaks to an incredible talent pool that are attracted to making documentaries here. On the scripted side, we've always had sort of strong films emerge on that side of the story of our region, and that has been a piece of the puzzle that I've always tried to stay committed to and involved in because we need scripted movies too, right? I explained that I'm sort of genre agnostic, and so you look at my IMDb, or you look at my films, and you'll see it's about 70% nonfiction, 30% fiction, right? So that's been the ratio of my experience, which is probably insane because I think documentaries are just harder to make. They take longer, they're harder to fund. You can sort of make them in sprints, but there is something so wonderful about shooting a scripted movie because you just do it in 20 days and you're done. And then you can, if you don't have money for post, you can start to, solve that problem, right? But yeah, a lot of the, I'm, happy to go on the lifelong journey of making a movie if it's the right person and the right project. But and if you're in the Bay Area, all the better because we can actually meet at my favorite cafe in Lower Haight and maybe have coffee together.
So finding funds for financing films has been hard forever and will continue to be difficult. But I'd be curious if you could speak to fundraising as a specific local issue. Do you have any tips for the filmmakers in the room in terms of how to find funding for their films, or why the Bay Area is superior to every other part of the country in terms of finding financiers, finding equity, finding funds in general?
Sure. So I think how much time do we have? We're 10:23. Okay, so I think what might be helpful here, Liz, is to kind of give you all maybe a financing or fundraising 101, at least from my perspective, okay? There's no one way to do this, and there's an incredible diverse array of strategies in the toolbox that you could involve yourself in to try to find money for your movie, okay? It can feel like turning over every rock at times. Your podcast is called Making Movies Hard, and fundraising is hard, okay? It is very hard. But I do want to say, this is my big joke that I always say, like when I'm pitching, like, what are the first 3 letters of the word fundraising spell? They spell fun, okay? So if you don't make it fun for yourself, like make it interesting, make it dynamic, like, you're going to hate it, okay? Because you're going to be on a treadmill, When I look back at my career, I've raised more than $30 million for independent films over the arc of my career. And sometimes when I even do that math, I'm like, oh my God, how did I do that? And I did that in all kinds of interesting and dynamic ways. And I failed a lot along the way, okay? But anyway, the financing 101. So for those of you who are on the documentary side of business, you typically need to operate as a 501c3 nonprofit if you really want to fundraise successfully. So you probably get a fiscal sponsor. Is this sounding familiar to people? They get relatively, right? There are many good fiscal sponsors out there, and they allow you to operate as a legitimate nonprofit or charity in the United States, and you can take donations. You can also funnel your grant funds through that. It's a wonderful way to raise money for a film when that's a good fit. If you have a cause that your film is about, you want to give your donors a chance to support you, right, in a way that is much like a charity, right? Now, how do you differentiate your charitable endeavor as a filmmaker from like funding the homeless or funding COVID or funding more urgent things? Well, welcome to that, right? We have to make a case for our life and work as filmmakers that we actually add value to the culture and we add value to to civil society in ways that we should command funding just like every other urgent cause out there, right? If we don't make movies about COVID, if we don't make movies about homelessness, if we don't make movies about HIV and AIDS or LGBTQ rights or whatever your cause is, like how can we move these situations forward as a culture? So understanding that there's a pitch there that is not for profit, a charity, right? I could walk you through, incredibly robust ways to do that. On my movie, The G Word, which I talked about earlier about giftedness, I have created and monetized a whole partnership community of nonprofits around the world that are actually paying to support the film while we're making it. It's been a hugely beautiful experience. They see the film as something they want to support. They pay anywhere from $250 to $5,000 to join the network. And we've raised more than $80,000, and that's significant money to kind of keep the lights on for a documentary when you're trying to keep it moving forward, right? So the not-for-profit side, there's also diverse ways to do that. I have crowdfunded 14 times, okay? And only failed once on Kickstarter, and that was painful, right? So some films and filmmakers, they want me to crowdfund, and I can tell how ready they are. And I'm like, you're going on Indiegogo where there's no, where there's no pressure. Well, there's always pressure, right? I have films where we're on crowdfunding because we got into a festival and we need to raise $30,000 to deliver the movie for a festival. And that's a very stressful thing to do, but you look at the reality of what do I have to fundraise, how fast, what's the way to, get there. On the scripted side, it's much more complicated, okay? And that's where a lot of people kind of start to gloss over, and sort of, there's not a specific roadmap, but let's say you wanted to finance a film using private equity investors, okay? First thing you need to do is you need to form some sort of vehicle, a company, that can actually take investment, right? So that's often an LLC, okay? I've been a filmmaker who actually manages too many LLCs, so some years ago I pivoted into having a corporation. So depending on where you are in your journey, you might look at the corporation solution as a way to funnel money into a film, but sometimes an LLC is more than enough, okay? And an LLC will protect you as an individual, but it will also be a legal entity that can take private investment, okay? Then you decide how much do you want to raise by way of private equity. I don't make micro-budget scripted features, because I'm too old for that. But let's say you wanted to make a movie that was a $500,000 budget. Okay, that's a movie I might make, okay? And you decided that you wanted to raise $200,000 of that money through private equity. So what you would do is you would work with your attorney to create investor documents. We call it a private offering. And you would structure your raise, $200K, in the context of shares, right? Maybe it's 10 shares of $20,000. And then you have to be able to find people who want to absorb the risk and jump on your movie at the 20K level, right? And actually invest in it, right? Well, what's going to incentivize them, to do that? Well, on the back end of making the movie, they typically need two things. They need what we call a premium, okay? And they need what we call a relationship to net profits, okay? And so, for example, if someone has invested $20K, and they're always first dollar in, first dollar paid, right? So, and they get paid back pari passu, meaning everybody gets paid the same amount at the same schedule once they're earning money back, right? So, and your investors, came on like through your development raise or your pre-production raise, and they just jumped on early, so that's why the premium is so important. You need that for them to say yes. So for every dollar that they get paid back, they then get another 20% before the film reaches its net profit threshold. People following me on this? Yeah. And then you maybe split the net profits with your investors, 50% to the producers or the LLC, 50% to them, right? Shared pari passu, shared in, pro rata, as the film makes income, right? What you do when you're trying to think of a movie as an enterprise that makes money is you see it as a pie, okay? And there are different ways to cut up the pizza, if you will. And there's different ways to compensate people who are involved in bringing the movie to the screen. So on the producer side of the producer's unit, right, let's say there's no money in the bank, right? Well, equity, giving points on a film, maybe you've heard that strategy, is a way to compensate people. That's the 50% that you've maybe saved over here that you're not giving to your investors, right? So, I really want this DP, I really want this actor, I'm gonna give them points, right? As well as maybe their low budget SAG rate, because they love the script, they wanna be involved, And so that they needed a little extra something for their agent to be comfortable with them saying yes, or something of that nature, right? Also, if you're thinking about people on the producer side of your movie, like obviously it's a best case scenario when producers have a salary, right, and are being paid a line item out of the budget. But there are ways to compensate people with credits on a film, with relationship to the LLC. It could be a multi-member LLC where they're vested in that. They could have a relationship to the film's net profits. There's lots of different ways for people to kind of be a part of that pie. And typically, though, what you want is until the movie warrants giving over any rights, like assigning a territory like the United States to a distributor, you don't want to do that unless you really need to do that. Because the movies that have the most value are typically the ones where the producers retain all the rights. And they go to festivals and they sell them, and then you hear about those deals in the trades. So if you are in a situation where you have to sell off rights, which I do a lot because I'm trying to get my movies made and no one's giving us the money, so we pre-sell territories, right? Your film is kind of less attractive to Netflix, by the time it premieres, right? So I have to consult my filmmakers sometimes and say, you know what? We don't have enough money for post-production. We have to think differently about what this movie is doing right now. And you got to get it made and get it out in the public before you can sort of say it's done. You make those tough choices. Sometimes that's when I involve a sales agent. And if a film commands it, like for example, I produced a film about Pierre Cardin, who's a famous French fashion designer. He passed like not a year and a half after our film came out. And we were, believe it or not, we were having trouble raising money for that movie. I mean, as famous as he is, right? And so we had a very strong sales agent that was selling our film with us territory by territory, right? So we sold Japan, we sold Australia, we sold France, and those bits and bobs of money, not only do they help fund production, they help allow for other kinds of financing to be leveraged as you're finishing your film. That's when you get toward, like let's say you have a film that you've shot, and you don't know how to get completion financing, well, if you could start selling territories, and if you're garnering distribution interest, you actually can go to a bank, okay? And the bank will actually do what's called a gap loan, and there's completion bonds, and there's all these different sort of financing products, companies like Entertainment Partners and Bondit, and they help you finish your film, and of course they have a stake in that, and of course they have to be paid back. Sometimes there are equity financiers that will help you finish a film, but they need to be paid back immediately, right? So they operate like a loan. So it just depends on what amount of risk you're willing to absorb to get your movie on a screen, and you kind of work that way. I think the big challenge is to decide what budget are we making this film at, right? And then mapping the financing strategy to get to that budget, right? So you can imagine that the $500,000 movie that I started talking about in the beginning of my description looks very, very different from the $5 million budget that we might want to make, right? And how it could be very, very hard to raise $5 million from private equity investors, because think of how many investors you're going to have to manage. So a private equity raise for an independent film, which is very common in the Bay Area and very common in general, is something you want to do in a managed, thoughtful way, where you're not exposing yourself to too many relationships that will make it very hard to track the back-end reporting of your movie, right? I have a movie called Heaven Adores You, which was a private invested funded documentary about Elliott Smith. And that movie was premiered in 2014, and we're still reporting to those investors actively on a quarterly basis. So you have to just understand that it's the life of a film. You're involved with these investors.
So I have 1,000 questions after everything you just said, but I think the most important
Are people following how I'm walking through this? Okay.
So the most important one is, when do you start the LLC? Because when I started the LLC for my movie, I had lots of advice. Like some people told me to wait. Some people told me as soon as you have money in, start the LLC, start that process. Mm-hmm. And I ended up starting it probably 2 years before I made my movie. And so that's like $800 a year in LLC fees, plus fees for an accountant to do the taxes for the LLC as well. Yeah. So it can be expensive. So my question to you is when do you think filmmakers should start their LLC? Should it be before they have money raised, right in the beginning, or later on?
There's not any clear exact benefit around timing. The only thing I kind of recommend is that you track your expenses actively from the moment you start spending money, okay? So if you are spending your own money on a film that you're trying to develop, you should be tracking those not just for your personal income taxes, but for the future transparency of the movie, okay? If the movie should scale into something that warrants more than just you and your own personal or business bank account, okay? Because you want to know, I'm Marc, and I've invested $8,000 into developing my movie, okay? And that $8,000 can actually go on record in your LLC operating agreement as a disclosure, right? That so when other people, are joining your kind of, pie, it's very clear that that was either an $8,000 investment in the LLC, or that it's recoupable to you before other investor money gets, spent on the movie. There's lots of different ways of thinking about your personal investment in a film, right? You also, I think, you can't do this in, legitimately in the LLC agreement, but you should be monetizing your sweat equity on your film, right? So a lot of filmmakers, they don't even take the time to have a calculating tool that says, I worked this many hours unpaid on my own movie this month, right? And I think for your own sort of confidence, if you want to move your movie into a more, robust set of financing opportunities, you really have to put a monetary value on your sweat equity. Because you can actually articulate that to an investor, and they're gonna be like, wow, you worked on this movie for 9 months, unpaid, full-time, and now we're talking, and this package is ready, and if you don't think to yourself, well, that 9 months meant this many hours, what I should have been paid by the hour, we all can sort of set a reasonable rate that we wish we could be paid in an unpaid environment. Every unpaid opportunity should be thought about in a monetized framework, right? So if you are someone who, is working on your film because you're the only one to develop it, you really have to put a value on your time. Your time is so important. Development is the hardest phase of a film to fund because you've got nothing to show people. I'm writing my screenplay. I'm an unpaid writer, right? Who cares how many people are doing that, right? Well, but if you are thinking about your time methodically, it's this product that you've written, right? That you can then say, gosh, it took me this long to write it, and I actually have a sense of what that means personally, professionally, monetarily.
Being a Bay Area filmmaker, has that helped you in any way with fundraising? Like in terms of nonprofit donations?
Yes.
Any of these models you're talking about?
Yes. Oh, please. I mean, the Bay Area is an incredibly generous philanthropic set of worlds that we all move through. I can't say that. It'd be hard for me to maybe put a monetary value on how much money I've raised in the Bay Area versus other parts of the world, or the country or the world, but I know that I have deep networks here, and I have, I've had how many fundraising parties here. I mean, I just had a fundraiser at an art gallery for a film a month ago. We did very well, So yes, we are constantly raising money. I'm on the fundraising treadmill for the films that are at my company all the time. And it has to be a local component for it if it involves local talent. So yes, but I think there's always a local component, there's a national component, and then there's an international component. And some of my films just don't make sense internationally. Like, we're just not pitching them because no broadcaster in Europe is going to care. There isn't really a global sales agent that is going to get why this U.S. story is important. All these different things that we know that film might do well at a festival in Europe, but they won't know it until they see it, right? And so you have to kind of ask yourself, what's my film, right? And how can where in the world might it matter? So this week, full disclosure, I have 2 movies going into wide release this week on Tuesday, which is an amazing moment, right? One is called Being BB, and one is called Baloney. Baloney is a local documentary that came out of my creative communities here. It's a beautiful film. It did really well at festivals. The other film is called Being BB, which is a documentary about Bibi Zahara Benet, who was the first winner of RuPaul's Drag Race, okay? She is famous around the world, right? And so we were able to have a much more international financing strategy for that movie. And oh, do I love a movie like that, right? Because I can actually talk to my networks around the world. And we were talking to Taiwan, we were talking to all the companies in Europe, and some of them came on late in the story, but it was extremely robust. Baloney, very local film, and very San Francisco story, and we just, we managed to sell it to a good distributor that is releasing it on VOD. So by appearances, it might be a smaller film, but we're giving it the same amount of love, the same amount of care, and but it was a much better film.
So going back to that filmmaker's got the script for their film, they're trying to raise money for their first feature, maybe they have made some shorts, maybe not. Once they have their plan together, once they have followed like this finance 101 and they're ready to go out to investors, how do they do that? They don't have the connections necessarily that you have or that someone else who's been doing this for a long time have. Maybe they don't even have any family connections to any finances. They're just a person who has a great idea and has a great plan. Like, how do they find those equity investors to put money into their movie?
So this is a tricky question, right? Because what it speaks to is the fact that some people move through circles where they have access to wealth and some people don't, right? And that's a huge problem in our industry. The number of filmmakers that I personally know that their careers are only possible because they came from rich families that have wealth, is a very long list. And many of them, the way that they do what they do is they then continue to invest in other people's films, and so they sort of spread the love around that way. And so there is a certain kind of virtuous independent film kind of culture in that sense of wealthy films and filmmakers kind of helping non-wealthy ones, and we see that happening. They create a film fund, they create a company that does finishing funds, that so on and so forth. I was not a person that came from wealth. And I told you my mother was a Holocaust survivor, okay? So I was middle class. I grew up in a townhouse in New Jersey until we moved to LA when my mother's career took us there. And I worked my way up. I landed in San Francisco in 1990 and I have been relentless, okay, for 32 years figuring out how to make a case for making my art in a way that is sustainable, okay? So I think that you have to see yourself in relationship to that wealth narrative. You have to be able to step into it and be comfortable pitching to those people that you belong there, that the worst that they can say is no, and that no is not you're awful, you're evil. No, on this project, maybe you can come back, You cannot do this work to be liked, okay? You cannot work in the fields of art and film and media so people will like you. Right? You have to have an extremely thick skin and you have to be relentless. Now, if you're shy and you're awkward and you're more of a writer-director who's quirky, more power to you. You need producers then who can be your conduit to those people with wealth. If finding wealthy investors is the way you want to go, right? I don't think that I sort of feel like we all move through lots of different worlds at different stages of our lives, and we just have to figure out our comfort zone. I very early on in my 20s, I figured out that I had nothing to fear. And I was very, very early on able to just move through these worlds with some degree of confidence, and that the worst that they would say is no, and that it wasn't going to destroy me to hear the phrase no. And guess what? When you make movies, you're going to hear no a lot, right? So I don't seem, do I have relationships when you come pitch me a movie? And yes, but do I see myself as a gatekeeper? Not really, I think I try to see myself in this kind of, like I say, intentional economy where we all benefit, we all contribute, right? And if you see yourself in that kind of equation, then suddenly those wealthy people aren't so scary. And they are more approachable. And what they're excited about at the end of the day is you. A lot of times I have filmmakers who aren't comfortable pitching, and I just have to say, you have to get comfortable pitching. Because they're funding talent, they're funding you. Yes, it's your script, or yes, it's your documentary, but they want to fund you. And especially at this interpersonal level where, we're not in, it's kind of like in the indie world, it's just a sort of hopefully more friendly kind of, scaled down version of the Hollywood world. Our models are very similar. And if you see yourself, in that equation, it's really just about what's the budget of my film and how do I get there, right? I don't know if that really helpfully answers your question, but there's no magic wand. I'm not sitting up here because, I can text someone that you can't. Sometimes I can, but it's a little bit of over the arc of a life, you build relationships. And if you're good with those relationships, you'll be able to return to those people. I cherish the people, the festivals, the distributors, the streamers, the professionals at all those companies, the people who've invested, and part of my job is communicating back to them not just that gratitude, but the why of how it worked or didn't work. Right? Some movies do make money, some movies don't. And you'd be surprised how even a movie that didn't make a lot of money, that the investor will come back to you again and say yes again because of how you conducted yourself.
Just to press you on that just a little bit, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Liz, I know you have a question, but in 1990, when you went and started fundraising for your movies, kind of like in San Francisco for the first time, what had you done before then? Like,
okay, so in 1990, I was 21 years old. Okay, which I know you can hardly believe, right? So I landed here after having an undergraduate degree in film from UC Santa Cruz. I got my first apartment in the Castro. I was a young queer AIDS activist, who loved movies and wanted a film career. I got a job at all the local film festivals, and suddenly I was Mr. Everywhere. Okay, like that was my story. The first few years in the 90s, I worked at the Jewish Film Festival, I worked at Frameline, and then I landed eventually at San Francisco International, right? Those first few years in the 90s, all I did was be ubiquitous. I was at every event, everywhere I could volunteer, everywhere I could intern. I was unstoppable. And that, you have that kind of energy in your 20s, so why not, right? Be present, be involved in community. And that just was sort of in my DNA anyway, because I was a young activist. And so I started connecting with documentary filmmakers who needed help with their fundraising. And I saw I was very good at it. I was very good at writing grants. I was very good at helping them with their events. That was a sweet spot for me because I had this kind of odd, fearless confidence at an early age that was, I think, a value proposition for independent filmmakers who needed people like that on their team. And then as the story goes, it's kind of a sweet story. So in 1994, I was a young programmer at the San Francisco International Film Festival. I always joke about this because nobody at the festival actually knew my real age, and I was actually 24 years old. And I was the young person in the programming department. And at one point, the office manager the day before my birthday came up and she's like, "Tomorrow's your birthday. Are you going to be 25? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be 25. And then she stands up, everyone's like, oh my God, you guys, Marc's only 25. Like they all thought I was some old, person in my 30s. And I don't know, I sort of had this kind of, very productive first few years at a college, and I landed in this very good job. And we were locking our program that year at the film festival, and my boss was a guy called Peter Scarlett. That's probably not a name that means anything to any of you. But he and I had a real kind of energy with each other. We liked each other a lot, and we were all, I was that guy that was back in those days that got the faxes, got the phones, got the VHS cassettes, and I kind of tracked them as they were coming into the programming department. And we got a very late call from producers of a film called Adventures Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I don't know if that's a movie that means anything to any of you. And I'm like, I'm taking this home tonight, and I'm watching this film tonight. It's called Adventures Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Me and my roommate Carla, we smoked a big fat joint, and we watched Adventures of Priscilla, and I said, this is going to be the frickin' biggest movie of the year. And even though I was stoned, I still thought it was a big movie. And I walked into my boss's office the next morning, and I said, you need to watch this today. We were like 3 days from locking the program. He is navigating big deals with Miramax and trying to get our opening night films logged, blah, blah, blah. He's like, is it really, really good? And I'm like, it is so good. We can sell out the Castro with this. This is gonna be a change-making movie. And he's like, okay, I'll program it. We program it. And he gave me the film, and I was in charge of orchestrating the premiere of that movie. We oversold the Castro. We turned away hundreds of people.
Wow.
Distributors came up because there was a pre-Cannes buzz. We got the film at SF Film Festival before Cannes.
Wow.
And a bunch of buyers came, and that film was bought before Cannes. And so I was in the room that night. I helped create that moment. I saw what a film festival could do to help get a movie placed with a really important mainstream distributor. And I was hooked. And I was like, this is not only my career, this is how I have to approach this, is that I understand how to cultivate audience and enthusiasm and market these movies to what in the 90s we called niche communities or niche audiences, right? I knew I had some kind of sweet spot with the queer audience because that was my community, right? But I could see how there was excitement brewing across different verticals of communities in the 90s, and that would continue to be a way to fundraise, to finance, to execute on marketing, and to work with distributors. So my first business that I started boldly at age 26 was actually a sales and distribution company first. Wow. And that's what I did. I distributed movies, and I was crazy, and I did it for about 6 years, and that kind of segued me into the first films I was able to finance. But it was always with the goal of eventually making movies, as a filmmaker. But that kind of crazy young entrepreneurial thing that I did with my first film company which exposed me to all aspects of the independent film business, like, and how that business works, was the exposure vehicle for just all the things I've learned that I'm talking with you about here today. And that early exposure in sales was also pivotal for kind of getting my knowledge out ahead of people's around how to understand, like, if you understand where the films are going to go, you can kind of reverse engineer a strategy, right, to kind of get the films made. And that was really what started to make sense for me. You know, it was, okay, if you have power over here, then you really are starting strong, right? And so, you know, that was sort of the thing that started to make sense.
Yeah.
I keep muting myself because I'm in a house full of children under 10. So if you hear like banging on the piano while I ask this question, that's what's going on. I'm not in a crazy musical. It's just a lot of children. A lot of emerging filmmakers have a presumption that if you keep your overhead low, or if you play at Sundance, then you're going to make a career or a life, a sustainable life out of making movies. The reality is very different, right? A lot of filmmakers cannot live their life making movies entirely. As you mentioned, you're relentless. As you mentioned, you went into distribution at an early stage in your career. But I just want to know, at what point were you able to 100% live a life of being a filmmaker? And what advice would you have for people in the room with regard to sustainability?
Oh, goodness. Oh, my God. So my career unfolded in sort of several stages, and I actually had a pretty significant health crisis in the 2000s that kind of took me out of the film business for 3 or so years, where I had to make my life really small and kind of not die. And so because that happened to me, I had a lot of time to think about what kind of career I wanted in the future and how I wanted to be in the world and in this business. And so, when I came out of that horrifically dark period in my life and I emerged, I came at everything, with my younger version of myself. There was not enough expertise around risk calculus and understanding all the moving parts of the business. And I was a sole entrepreneur, so I was just taking on everything. And it was just, it really was the end of me. I mean, I almost died. And so that, when you talk about sustainability, like, you have to take care of yourself. You have to understand your own kind of calculation when it comes to risk. This is a very risky business. Do not take on more risks than you can, because it will not work out well for you, right? And add in self-care and family and friends and relationships. Like we have to wrap ourselves up in a community that believes in who we are, and vice versa, right? In order to stay the course with some kind of confidence and clarity. I will let, the early version of that guy, the guy who discovered Priscilla, the Queen of the Desert, and then jumped into a career, I just didn't ask for enough help. I didn't ask for support. I needed to be like this sort of sole entrepreneur. And some things happened to me during that period that were, like, other people wanted to buy my company, and I got scared. I didn't want to lose ownership of this thing that I had created, that I was the entrepreneur of. And if I had sort of said yes to some things, that would have been a model where I would be working for someone else, right? And that wasn't why I started the company. I wanted to be my own boss. I didn't see myself like becoming somebody else's, cog in a machine, even if that machine meant that it would pay me a salary, right? So I made some decisions where I said no to things that I could have said yes to, and you live, you love, you learn, right? No regrets, right? Have that rough patch, and then 3 years of not being well, and when I came out of it, I said, Marc, you can do this differently. You can do this better, and you can do this, in a way that really is sustainable. And so the company I have now, 13th Gen, I started in 2009, and touch wood, we are sustainable. I mean, it's not perfect all the time. I have certain months that are feast or famine, but mostly, we keep the lights on at my company, and I work for myself, and I am a job generator for others, and we pay our bills, and I thank God and Goddess and whatever else every day, that I can call myself an independent filmmaker living in the most expensive city in the country, and I'm a homeowner with my husband. I mean, this is a story that I'm very proud of, right? I didn't have to go down and work at Lionsgate and become somebody else's cog. I have my own entrepreneurial thing, and because of that early kind of period of rough lessons, I could redo it. You know, I had a do-over, and thank goodness I was given that chance. So my 20s were rock star. I mean, like so rock star. I mean, it was like bizarre. You know, I mean, like there was back in those days there was a printed calendar for the San Francisco film community. Okay, every year it was a gorgeous printed 4-color calendar. In the middle of that calendar was a fold-out in 1998, and there were 2 people quoted in that calendar with pull quotes. One of them was Mayor Brown, Willie Brown, and one of them was Marc Smolowitz. Okay, that's the kind of 90s I was having, right? I was like the 30 under 30 in San Francisco magazine, you know, it was that kind of story in my 20s, right? My 30s, I was a fucked up mess. In my 40s, I was kind of the do-over guy. I got to do it over. Late 30s, early 40s, you know? Now I'm in my 50s, and I'm like the old guy at the front of the room telling you how I did it, yeah? And I know you can hardly believe I'm in my 50s, right? But it's, you know, when you look back on your life, it makes sense, you know? And you know, there's a story that you can kind of comprehend about yourself, you know? And hopefully along the way, you know, I conducted myself mostly as a virtuous person and made some great movies, helped some other filmmakers make some great movies. And, you know, I don't even know if I'm really answering your question, Liz, but, you know, this is, you know, it's, you know, my career makes total sense to me where I'm at, you know? And so since I started 13th Gen in 2009, I mean, we have been significantly involved in more than 40 movies in the last 13 years. And that is not a small amount of movies as an independent producer to be involved in. But let me be very clear with you that there are movies where I am a producer with a capital P. That's how I describe it. Meaning, like, the books are at my company. I have an equity stake in the film. I own something about that film, and it's all over my desk, and I have to wake up every morning and worry about it. There are other movies where I also wake up and worry about it, but my role is much more specific, right? Where I'm an executive producer and I have a particular kind of involvement in a film, or I'm a co-producer because I'm helping a filmmaker from outside the United States have a presence in the US, or I'm a consulting producer, and that's a big part of how I work now, where frankly all of you hire me and pay me to do work for you, and that's how I, you know, and the consulting producer pathway at my company is a way for us to get to know each other and for me to understand that you're not a crazy person and that we're actually a fit in terms of mission, vision, and values around the film, and that I'm the right producer for you. So many films start in my consulting arm, and then they graduate because I've decided they're able to, and they prove themselves, and I become a vested producer or an executive producer or some other kind of producer. When you come to my company, you will start in the consulting arm. Like, that's where you will begin. We'll have a 30-minute meeting for free. I get to know you, you get to know me, you learn about how I work, and we kind of figure out if you're a fit. And I work in these 10 and 20-hour increments, and those are usually a revelation. We can start to see some real productivity. You know, and over 20, 40 hours, we're making progress. And, you know, we figure out if we are a good fit, and both interpersonally, creatively, business-wise, on and on, right? If we don't like each other and you don't like my style, you know, goodbye and good luck, right? And then, so the consulting relationship allows us to shake hands, so to speak, and say goodbye respectfully. And I haven't impacted your rights. You still own your film. And I think a lot of filmmakers don't even think about that. They just want to go make their movie. And what I help them understand through my consulting business is, your movie's a business. Let's figure out how to wrap it up as a business, so you actually can go out and do the work that I do, which is finance the film in a credible way that is a winning strategy. If you're struggling for years to find funding for a film, you're making the wrong film, or you're talking about the film in the wrong way, because this is not impossible to do. You know, you should be able on an annual basis to chart progress with your fundraising, even if your film is hard to finance, okay? If you're not having progress, ask yourself if you're making the right movie, because there's a lot of people who want to make movies.
So I know it's at 11 and we need to wrap things up soon.
We can do about 10 more minutes if you want.
Okay, I have one more question I want to ask, just in relation to what you just said.
If people want to ask questions, so I want to be able to do that for them too.
Yeah. Well, maybe this will be a short answer. We can have some Q&A.
Sure.
But basically, every filmmaker is looking for a producer. Like, we're all out there like trying to get our movies made, and we don't know how because we're directors, we're creatives, and we want that producer to come help us.
Yeah.
So when you see that director that meets with you and like you say yes to them, what are you seeing in that person, in their project, that makes you want to say yes and collaborate with them on the movie?
Okay, so that's a great question. Okay, so remember how I talked about being relentless? I need to feel that person is equally relentless. Okay, that's a huge part of what makes me excited. that like whatever it takes, they're going to get this movie done. Whether it's me jumping on as some kind of producer or someone else, like this movie's going to get done. Okay, like that person excites me, and I can usually get that in the first Zoom. Okay, how they talk to me about their film, you know, like if you show up and all you do is complain about how hard your film is to get made, like that's not a fun person to talk to. You know, like I need to have the sense that you are going to make this movie, right? So it's a personality piece. That's one of the pieces. But then I also have to see how I fit in a way that really makes sense. And so let's say you want me to be like the capital P producer, okay? I need to know that your film is buttoned up, okay? So there'll be a period of evaluation where we look at everything, okay? Have you done your releases right? Have you done your clearances right? Do you have insurance? I typically will have you do tons of homework on your dime, on your time, to show me that you have not made a messy movie. And actually anybody who gets involved in your film as a vested producer, whether it's a guy like me at 13 Gen or a streamer, is going to need all of that, just all that stuff disclosed to them. Because they need to know it's not a mess, that they're not going to take on risk, that they're, suddenly lawyers are calling and complaining, right? We know who wants that. Like, that's not fun, right? So if I become a capital P producer, it's because we're that close. I know, like, I'm in the weeds in your movie, and I trust you, and you trust me, and we've decided this is the right relationship. Being BB, the one that's coming out on Tuesday, I'm a vested producer. 13 Gen is a co-owner of the film, and Emily is a rock star director, producer, editor who knew how to do it, and it was just the right movie at the right time. She had started that movie in 2006, 3 years before BB was on RuPaul's Drag Race in season 1. Okay, came to me she met me in 2016. I had a film screening at Doc NYC called The Nine, which I produced for a Bay Area filmmaker named Katie Grannon. We were having our New York premiere, and another woman from an earlier film called Heaven Adores You, who had been on our team, like introduced me to her, and she's like, I hear you're an accomplished queer producer. Like that was the start of the, like after the Q&A, we're all mingling, and and then 2 years later, I'm on her movie. After she did the deep work with me, making sure that I was the right producer. And that's a huge investment on the filmmaker's time. It's very courteous to me, but it's like, if you want my help, I have to know that this can work, and it makes a lot of sense. With Baloney, the other film that's coming out this week, that filmmaker, so I made a movie with Darcy Drollinger called Shit and Champagne, which is this crazy, wonderful, drag queen comedy that Darcy is the sole creator. He's writer, director, and star. Okay, he owns a nightclub called Oasis here in town, in Soma, and we've been in community together for a million years. I was involved in a movie in the 90s called Fancy's Persuasion that his group Enrique did a cameo in. Like that's how far we go back, right? So Baloney is a boy burlesque troupe that performs in-house at Oasis. So because I was exposed to Oasis so closely with making Shit and Champagne, the filmmaker of Baloney found me, and we found each other. And I mean, literally, he sent me, we tell this joke openly, he sent me a 140-minute horrible version of the movie, that I watched. It was horrible. It was this meandering thing with ravey music and, weird flashes in the edit, to make it look artsy. And I said, dude, okay, these boys are so sweet, so smart. I see so much humanity in these bits of interview that you're actually letting me experience as opposed to these flashes of art. Can we rethink this movie entirely and focus on the people? And I'm and I see great rehearsal footage, I see some great performance footage, let's go behind the scenes and find the structure. And it was so clear that he needed me and that I was the right producer to fix that movie. And man, did we fix it. We fixed it in 8 months, and then it had a great world premiere, and it's been all over. Wow. And so that was a local filmmaker that I just kind of personally fell in love with him, and me, and we found the right terms for our arrangements. And now it's coming out through Gravitas Ventures, and it's available on Tuesday. I hope you buy it. It's super entertaining. It's really touching. The date book yesterday called it Paris is Burning of this moment. It's a very, very sweet behind the scenes, get to know these performers in the backdrop of the most, trying to make art in the most expensive city in the world. So who can't relate to that, because we all do that here.
Wow.
Yeah, Alrik, I'm going to take my leave, but I just want to thank Marc for just letting me enjoy this conversation, and I'll let y'all do the Q&A.
Thanks, Liz.
Bye. Nice meeting everyone.
Well, Marc, thank you for all this amazing information. It's been fantastic. I have thousands more questions, but like you said, let's open it up to the room.
Yeah, I would love to hear from people who have questions.
questions?
I see some old-time friends here in the audience today, and some filmmakers I work with, and some editors. Yes.
I've heard different people say that they like pitch decks, other people say they don't like them. What if I'm presenting a movie to somebody?
I need a pitch deck. Yeah. If you don't have a pitch deck yet, you can come to me and I'll help you make the pitch deck. Okay, that's part of what we do in my consulting arm. So packaging is an extremely sweet spot for me. I can help you go from a strong paragraph about your movie to creating all the materials. Whether it's the budget, the pitch deck. In some cases the sizzle, in some cases the online presence. It just depends on what we agree is the most important tasks. But nowadays, everybody's doing pitch decks. It is critically important to have a good one that is designed, that gives your film a brand and identity early on, okay? The thing that I will say about that is that I also work with my filmmakers to cultivate your brand and your identity, okay? So just as we make the film and it needs a brand, you need a brand. And I know that not everyone likes that word, but it makes my point, right? In that you need to know who you are and how you want to communicate yourself from a marketing perspective, and I sometimes help you figure that out and give you the language to do that, because that's fun for me, because I'm so interested in talent and your success, and so we kind of figure that out together. But it doesn't have to be like the most perfect like I always tell people, like before the consulting call, like when I do that first call, I don't spend more than 10 minutes reviewing something, right? Because I don't know you, and so if you have a pitch deck, it helps me. If it looks like shit, I'll know, and that'll be like something we can talk about in the first call. But typically, a really short trailer, if you have something to share with me, is a great way to begin. I once made a strategic introduction to a film from a filmmaker to an important producer. I didn't think I was the right producer for it, but I knew who was, and she sent me a 90-second sizzle, and I knew who should make it with her, and that film has been made. And so you never know, like, where I might kind of like think, I'm not the right person for that. And there are movies that I meet through my consulting meetings that I'm not the right producer, but man, I want to see them get made. And then there are a lot of people who are just not right. And people pitch me, and I'm like, I'm not going to make your $500 million movie. Like, that's not that's who we are. And like, know who you're talking to, and then we might have a meaningful conversation.
And I'm just going to repeat the question for the recording going forward. So just,
sure, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So who's next? In the back there.
Do you have an opinion on narrative films, like getting a Rip-O-Matic trailer together when pitching, or is that sort of just like something people don't do?
So Rip-O-Matic trailers, are Rip-O-Matic trailers good or are they bad?
They're good, sure, why not? Yeah, I mean, anything that helps me visualize what you're thinking is in service of the discussion, right? I don't think it's a must-have, but if you like to make that kind of thing and you're good at it, like, and it shows me something that is clear and compelling and exciting, like, right on. This is a visual medium, right? So I want to read words sometimes, because words are also a way for me to evaluate something, but if you have something visual, that's much more compelling, right? I mean, sometimes really good pitch decks are all visual and very few words.
Any other questions? Right here.
This isn't a very important question, but I was wondering the name of your company, 13 Gin, what does that mean?
13 Gin, what does that mean? So remember how I told you I was coming off this rough patch, right? And I wanted to create a new company for a new version of myself, right? And so if you Google 13 Gin, you'll find me, of course, but you'll also find that it was a book, okay? And it was a book that came out in 1994. And it was the first book that tried to kind of curate the voices and meaning and ideas of Generation X, okay? So I am very much a product of my generation, Generation X. And I liked it because I was like, well, so the book talks about how we're the 13th generation in the story of in the American story. So since the so-called founding fathers, there have been 13 generations, and we are the most unlucky generation, right? That's what the book talks about. We were born into a dark recession. It was the AIDS years, the Reagan-Bush years. It was a terrible time to be in your 20s. And then everything changed in the 90s. But I like this idea, like just like I like the word queer, and you can claim the word queer and make it a positive thing as opposed to a negative, derogatory thing. I decided to claim the number 13, which is supposed to be unlucky, and make it lucky. And there's actually, like, on my Tumblr blog for my company, there's a blog post that I wrote about the name that you can read sometime, but it's it really was a personal decision to name the company that, and something I gave a lot of thought to.
What's the age of that generation?
If you're born somewhere between 1964 and 1978, you're probably that moment. Yeah. But that said, we don't just work with filmmakers who are from Generation X. That would be kind of crazy. I love my boomers and work with some of those. I think they're, for sure. Definitely my millennials, my zennials, and oh my God, I love my Gen Zs and everybody, And what's funny is I always used to be the youngest guy in the room until I wasn't, okay? And now I'm not. And I love young people. I love working with young filmmakers. I have a lot of filmmakers in their 20s and 30s who are just rock stars. And the thing that, if you show a certain self-reliance, you're going to be a fit at 13 Gen. If you can see yourself on an entrepreneurial journey, we're going to be able to work well together, as well as a creative journey.
Are you familiar with Script Talk? It's a new script packaging program, and it allows you to incorporate photos, pull quotes, and so if you send your script, if you make a script copy as a PDF.
I'm not familiar with it, but I think there are so many awesome tools out there that help you visualize things. At the end of the day, people need to read the screenplay and respond to it, and it has to work as a screenplay. Screenplays are a little frustrating in my view sometimes, because I'm someone who loves novels and loves nonfiction and loves prose, right? And there are certain rules of the road when you write a screenplay that are just, in my view, I wish we could have more description, or I wish we could have, we're so focused on the dialogue working and almost like the screenplay directions to kind of convey what we think we're going to see on screen, and it so often doesn't look like the final product doesn't look like what's on the page, and so I'm that read is so. But when the words of a screenplay are brimming with emotion and are brimming with humanity, I just see it, I feel it. It's it doesn't matter, those rules that I feel sometimes constrain how screenplays feel to me, the screenplays that get me excited are the ones where that emotion just comes through the words. It's just, you just feel it when you read it. It's, I can't put a finger on exactly why that works. And some screenwriters just know how to create that world through the words, and it's quite something when it happens. But whatever tool works for you, I'm not going to be discouraged by it. Everyone has those things they like. For a while, I was using Adobe Spark as a way to create pitch decks, and then it became really clunky and hard for me to do some things, so I left that behind. So you just try different things that make it fun and creative for you to express your ideas visually.
Any other last questions? One more, maybe?
Oh. Hello.
I was wondering if you're seeing any kind of trends as far as what festivals currently are looking for or accepting.
Oh goodness, that's always the questionable question.
Film festival trends.
Are there film festival trends? Okay. So there are always film festival trends, and they can change from the winter circuit to the spring circuit to the fall circuit to the next winter circuit, right? The one trend is that all film festivals are trying to discover new filmmakers, right? So the big joke is that the first two films I produced, early in my career, both got into Sundance. I haven't gotten a single film into Sundance since, okay? And I don't mind saying that out loud because, the Institute responds to me. I am an alum, they'll read my emails and typically answer in a timely manner. But, they are really looking for new people, in cultivating new talent, right? So, you can't just focus on top tier festivals as your way out into the marketplace, because they have their moving parts that inform how they program. They're heavily reliant on their sponsor relationships, okay? So a lot of times they have to see the fit there, right? They're really interested in discovering talent. Sometimes organizations have been supporting that talent along the pipeline of making those films, so those films are more on their radar than others, right? So what we do at my company is we work very, very hard to make sure that the films that we produce are getting the highest level of top tier consideration from all the senior programmers and directors that we can actually get the films in front of, right? So that's how I'm able to differentiate if you work with me. And so yes, does that mean I'm hearing certain things that are interesting this year? Of course. Is it painful when films are getting rejected from top tier festivals and you have to move to a different strategy? Of course. But we always try to get the film the highest level of consideration and work from there, right? I had a film, I think I mentioned it, called The Nine by Katie Grannon, and the film had a series of very rough rejections. Like 11th Hour, the programmers were loving the film, and then we didn't get into Sundance, we didn't get into South by Southwest. It's heartbreaking. You're in those conversations where you feel like you're in the consideration discussion. And then we had a weird thing happen where we got invited to a festival in Europe called Vision du Real, which is quite prestigious in Europe, and actually felt like the right fit for the film because the kind of film it was. And so you have to have that difficult discussion, right, where with a US filmmaker and you try to convince them that you should premiere your film outside of the United States. Here's why, here's what we can do. And oh my God, did we ever benefit from making the decision to say yes? The film then returned to the US in the fall, as an award winner, and had an incredible fall, was in 20 festivals, and some of them really prestigious, and so you have to always approach everything you do in an a la carte manner. That's a phrase I use a lot. Take an a la carte approach to financing, an a la carte approach to festivals, and an a la carte approach to sales, meaning always have a plan A, B, and C, right? And as you reach certain benchmarks, you can take things off the table or keep them on the table. Just because someone who at a high level at a particular festival responds to my email doesn't mean your film is going to get into that festival. It doesn't mean that I exactly know what they want this year. But I think what I bring is that they know that I make quality movies that typically do well in the marketplace. So they are more making a strategic decision if they want to partner in that story, right? And with that film and that filmmaker, and we kind of see it in that kind of virtuous, intentional relationship that I described to you. I see my company and our festival network, I've placed films at more than 250 festivals on 5 continents, right? And have monetized that sub-distribution network beautifully. And so I need those festivals. So yes, have I had some painful rejections that are heartbreaking and tough to share with my directors, that we didn't get into XYZ place, but it's always dust yourself off and keep on doing it, because festivals can breathe life into a movie. And it's hard to know, a ton of B and C festivals may or may not get you a great distribution deal, but you're getting your film out there, and you are, developing an audience for it, and it will find its way out into the world. And so festivals are a whole conversation that I could talk for hours. Literally, it's a place I feel very at home, and I understand what they need. I understand how to work with them. So develop those relationships. Talk to programmers before your film's ready. Talk to them off season. If the festival's in February, write them in August. Write them earlier. Just say hello. Get them on your radar.
So that's all the time we have, I think. But thanks so much, Marc, for being a part of this conversation. If anyone missed any part of this, it's going to be coming out as a podcast on our podcast, makingmoviesishard.com. That's our website. It should be coming out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, so look for that. And Marc, anywhere people should go to learn more about you? Anywhere?
Yeah, I'm on IMDb like every other filmmaker. My company's called 13th Gen Film, and we're 13thgenfilm.com. And if you're looking for a movie to watch this week and you feel like, going to Apple TV or going to Amazon, I've got Being BB and Baloney coming out this week. You can let me know what you think. Being BB is also premiering on Fuse, for those of you who watch Fuse, on the 21st. So I'm really excited that the film is getting such a wide release. It then goes out in 7 countries around the world, day and date, through other distributors on June 21st. So. And good luck. Break some legs and arms. Make your movies. Because what? Making movies is hard. You're going to break some bones.
Liz, what do you remember about our talk with Marc?
Not a lot. I do remember being a disembodied face in the room and seeing everyone else, but not quite sure what they were seeing. And then the sound was fine, but not amazing. So I wasn't always able to completely hear everything that was going on because I was in Alabama. I think I was just wishing I was there. It would have been much better if I were in the room. But what was cool is no one could see it because we're not sharing the video, but the room was almost entirely empty at the beginning. It was 4 people. And then by the very end, it was standing room only, packed to the gills, really. And I think either everyone was late or another event got out late or something. But I think at first I was like, oh no, no one loves us. And then at the end, it was like, wait a second, we have utility. And we do. And and Marc is a superstar.
Yeah. No, it was fun. Yeah. At first, there was like at our scheduled time, there was nobody there. And then like after 10 minutes or so, like a few people started coming in, then it was 4. And then as we got started, like you said, yeah, it was just completely packed. At the end of the show, I was backing up and somebody came up to me and they're like, oh yeah, can I talk to you? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And they're like, do you have Marc's email?
You're like,
and I was like, no. I'm sure you can just get it from him.
Yeah.
Yeah, just, he's a really nice guy. You just look him up online. But yeah, no, it was really fun. Marc was great. I loved his whole story. I mean, it was really interesting to hear about like how he got started, in the business, because it's very, like nobody tells that story of like going through film festivals, starting as a volunteer, working their way in, and then like turning that into like a producing career. It's like we kind of heard that similar story from like a festival director, but like not from a filmmaker. So it's kind of cool that like he started in the world of film festivals and that was his entry point into becoming a producer and a filmmaker and a writer and all those things. So I think that was the thing that stuck with me the most. And that he was just such a nice guy and like, had a really cool like plan that he's been executing in order to like, create a life for himself and, be a sustainable producer, because there's so few of those. And the fact that he's one of them is pretty damn cool.
This week, we have an article from The Hollywood Reporter about the 347 new Academy members that were just announced. 44% are women, 37% are non-white, and 50% are non-Americans. And I guess about 54 different countries are represented. Big news, big news. Alrik, what did you think about all this?
Well, I was really excited because I was reading through. Well, first, like I have an acquaintance. Actually, well, I'm not going to call her out. She is a previous guest of the show, but she told me that she was being considered to be a part of the Academy, and she was like interviewing to go through the process. So I was like looking for her name desperately, like, oh, did she get it? Did she get it? And she didn't get it. But still, what I was even more delighted to see was that there are a few names on there that I did recognize that had been on the show. So Malgorzata Szymowska, who was on the show a couple years ago, she is a new Academy member, which is amazing. A fantastic European filmmaker, writer, producer. Myron Kirsten, editor extraordinaire of In the Heights and Crazy Rich Asians, who's on the show. He's Academy member now. Alice Brooks, the cinematographer of In the Heights, who was also on the show. She's Academy member now, which is really exciting. And of course, who couldn't be? This name would have to be included. Seb Ohanian, with a Midas touch, is now an Academy member. I wouldn't be surprised if he'd already been an Academy member, but the fact that he got it this year, that's very, very awesome. So congratulations to all of you. That's fantastic. I think it's a really nice, like even within like our little world, like our little sampling of this, it is like a pretty good mix of different people from different backgrounds and different, experiences. So yeah, it's very cool. What else do I think about this? I think it's a good step in the right direction. I think that they should get rid of their older members. I don't think anyone over 80 should be allowed to be in the Academy. I think like, I don't care, Francis Ford Coppola, you had your time. Your opinion is less relevant now, sir. I'm sorry. I love you as a filmmaker. Like, you're cool. He's really nice to me when I met him and stuff and worked with him, but too old, man. You gotta move on. Like, we gotta cut this out. Like 80 plus or 80 on your 80th birthday. Like, you can be like an honorary member or whatever. You can still have your status, but you're not voting. You're not watching movies anymore. Your opinion doesn't matter anymore. I think that should just be, because it's not fair. It's like we are like a younger, different community now. Like, the world is different than it was when these people got into the Academy. It's a completely different place. Like, they shouldn't be the ones who are deciding what's best picture, what's best writing. Like, it's just, they're not, it doesn't make sense to me. So that's my big push. Maybe it's controversial, but I think anyone who's 80 should not be able to vote in the Academy. But Liz, what did you think?
Well, I disagree about that.
Really? Why? Tell me why. Why do you disagree?
Because I think that we already live in a really youth-oriented culture, and like, I'm not going to cut out voices from the conversation. And I think older, more senior, more seasoned people have perspectives that I want to hear. But I also, yes, 80. Okay. Paul McCartney just turned 80, sir. But let me also say that I don't really understand the value of the Academy right now. So, maybe I just need to investigate more. Like, why does it have to be so particular, and why can't it be thousands of people as part of it, and why can't thousands? Why is it so specific a number each year? And why is it this like coveted club?
Well, it is thousands of people. It's like 10,000 members or something now. It's
no,
like
but per year, like why can't we expand it like per year?
Even more. You want even more people in.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know where I stand because I don't know what they do. I just know people say I want to thank the Academy. I know the DGA.
They get screeners and they
get screeners.
Brag to their friends and they vote.
It's like this club. It's a club, but what do they really do? I don't really know what they do. I know that the DGA screwed over Tom Putnam when he was on the show. Like I don't know if they really protect their members. Like I haven't figured out their true value. It just seems like it's a mark of status, right? And does it cost money? Do you get paid? Is it just for the health insurance? Like I just don't get it. So yay, I like all those people who got in and I hope that they're happy and I hope that they feel like joyful and grateful. But I don't know if I'm going to like put time and energy into being disappointed or happy about this. You know, it's like, okay.
I don't know. I just think that it's good. They're going in the right direction because I do think they should have more women. I do think they should have different representation from different backgrounds, different people of all ethnicities from all different countries.
So like they have more diversity for what? What do they do? What are they doing?
Well, because it's going to reflect the kind of movies that get awarded every year.
But so it's like the Oscars, right? But like who cares? Who cares?
You love the Oscars.
I love the Oscars, but like I love watching the spectacle. But like, what value does it really have, right? It's just like all performative. And
I think the Oscars have a huge value because like whoever has one is way more marketable than someone who doesn't have one. Especially if you're a director or you're a writer or you're a actor. I don't think the other, maybe DPs too. Let's throw cinematographers in there. I think those main, like the talent, disciplines or whatever, like those ones, I think it surely affects you, right? Like if you have an Oscar to your name, like you're going to get paid more.
It's a negotiation
more
tactic.
Jobs.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's a networking.
It brings you like a certain clout that like no, like very few other people have to have.
But let's acknowledge that it is really bullshit. Like it's a system built up of nothing. And they decided it was important, so it became important.
But it still matters. It really does have an effect.
For traditional Hollywood, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, just like we are doing with films, I feel like we want things to look like the world that we see. And the world that we see isn't all white, right? So like I think getting more diverse voices, more people in that is like kind of like reflects the world that we live in is important in the Academy, just it is as important as having representation on screen or having other stories to be told. I think it's equally important across all the boards because maybe you're right. Maybe it is bullshit, but like it's bullshit that actually affects people, that actually changes people's careers and people's lives. Like, depending on if they win or they don't, It's
a game I don't play though, right? Like I don't talk to those sales companies. I don't talk to those managers. I don't talk to those agents. I think there's a massive class of filmmakers where all of this news and all of the voting doesn't impact us in any way. And so it just becomes kind of fancy fodder to talk about. But I agree, like at a specific tier, it does have an impact. I can see that for sure.
Yeah. And I just think that just like everything, it should be more equal. Yeah. It shouldn't be run by the old white established majority like most things in the world, or at least in this country are, and I feel like getting it away from that and more to something that is, a little less like ageist, like it has there's people of all ages who are having, a say in the matter. And then like people of all colors and all backgrounds having a say in the matter.
But you're being ageist. You said cut out the old people.
I think 80. Plenty old at 79. You don't need 80-year-olds, going in there.
No age limit on either ends. Let them all in.
12-year-olds.
12-year-old. Well, think about Emily Higgins, who made her first feature at 12. Let her in. Let Emily in. And then let octogenarians and what's 90s? I know octogenarians. What's 90s?
I know octogenarian too. I don't know.
Niftogenarians. I don't know what it is.
I just think that people retire for a reason. And I'm not saying saying that you have to retire from filmmaking at 80. I'm just saying that like your perspective is not a part of what the world is today. Your perspective is part of what the world was when you were in your prime. And that's, show me an 80-year-old who is like with it and like hip and aware of all the things in the world and is like grounded into what our world is today, and then I'll disagree.
Did I not say Paul McCartney? Did I not already mention him?
Well, if I meet Paul McCartney at your house and I did our party, and then he turns out to be like a really well-rounded person who like, you know, knows like what crypto is and NFTs and is like, you know, in sync with the modern world, then sure. But I will bet you most 80-year-olds are like, NF what? Who? Where? Crypto? Huh? Are you talking about decrypting the Soviet spy missile from the 80s? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like people just at a certain age and like gracefully, like, okay, these decisions should be left to someone else, and that's fine.
Agree to disagree.
Agree. I don't know if you watched Comedy Bang Bang, but that was a running gag in an episode. It's like this segment where it's like, okay, it's called Agree to Disagree. Yeah. And they end everything, agree to disagree? Agree.
Well, I listened to Paul F. Tompkins today on a podcast, so that's not...
Oh, really?
I should listen to Comedy Bang Bang.
Oh man, Paul F. Tompkins, my hero. He's so funny. Okay, Liz, how do you stay consistent as a filmmaker? Like, how do you... And like, what does that even... Like you could answer this 1,000 different ways, but I just want you to take that question and like let me know what you think of that. Like, how do you keep yourself consistent, you know, as an artist, as a filmmaker?
I'm not. I get better is how I feel. As I genuinely think that I've gotten better with every single project and that I am not consistent in any way, shape, or form. And I look back, it's weird. So I'm cleaning out my email box, my Gmail box that has been around for, you know, I'm in 2010 now. So I'm looking at emails from 2010 every day, and Alrik, they're depressing. And I'm like seeing the way I used to communicate, you know, 12 years ago. And it was bad. It's bad now, but it was worse then. And I'm just thinking, when I made projects in film school or I made the features, it was like to get it done. I got to get it done for class. Got to get it done, you know, just to say I got it done. But now I'm at the point where I'm doing shorts and features or whatever it is, and I'm putting my own skin in the game in a different way. And I'm working on the craft in a different way, and I really do feel like I'm making a concerted effort to get better now and to go full force into things that are scary. So I have no idea how one can be consistent, though, because that's what you're trying. The core of your question is like, how do you get good and then stay good, right?
I guess what I really was asking is more about process and actually doing your filmmaking. So like, I love the way that you answer this question because it's very different than how I intended the question.
As usual, it's always me going off on some weird tangent.
Like, I was thinking of it more like how do you consistently produce work as your film as a filmmaker? Like, how do you make sure that you're putting in the time in your filmmaking goals on a weekly basis? Because you're so good at it. Like, you've got your meetings with Amy. You've got all your stuff going on. Like, you see me, like, you write a lot. Like, you know, you've got all these processes in place. Like, I feel like I'm really inconsistent as a filmmaker, not necessarily quality wise, but just like as in the time I put into my art. Like, it's totally haphazard. Like, some days I'll do 0. Other days I'll like stay up all night working on like a script idea or like jotting down stuff, you know? So like, I want to work to be more consistent. Like, I'm actually putting in time every day. And so I don't know, how do you do it? Like, how are you able to be consistently putting your time into the filmmaking?
And well, I genuinely think it's like a pragmatic step of clearing time in your calendar and protecting it at all costs. I mean, the Amy meetings, I don't move around unless I have to. At every meeting, we have a deliverable for the next meeting. What are we going to do for next week? It's keeping it forward. And then I have some regular meetings for projects, and it's always the question of what are we doing next week? What is due? It's treating it like homework. It's treating it like a class. You know, it's like, and using each other for accountability. Part of it is that, and part of it is attaching people that you don't know very well that you want to impress to your projects. Which just sounds silly, but it's like if I just invited my friends to be a part of a project, I'd be like, they'll be okay if I don't deliver this week, or they'll forgive me. But if there's someone I'm trying to impress in the project, then it's like, I'm going to get that in on time, and I'm going to go the extra mile, and I'm going to move this forward, and I'm going to see the inefficiencies because I'm trying to make a long-term relationship out of that person that I've somehow connived into being a part of my project. So I think it's a degree of, for me, it's like pragmatic, right? But it's also like, ego. It's ego and pragmatism at the same time.
And having partners seems to help. Like if you have someone else who's holding you accountable, like to that meeting, it's like that keeps you going forward on that specific project, which probably also keeps your creative juices flowing towards other projects as well.
And to have something at stake for it, right? So it's like there's something that I will win in my mind if I get this project off the ground. Like I will be seen in a certain way, or I'll get to see something come to life, or there also has to be an extreme desire to manifest the project at the same time. So what about you? Like what keeps you consistent?
I don't. I'm not consistent. But what I need to do is like start doing what you're doing and start scheduling meetings.
Yeah.
And like being less reactive and more proactive.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like I react to like when people reach out for me to read a script, or if they like, oh, we want to meet to talk about collaborating on a project or whatever, like I kind of respond to that stuff and set meetings and discuss things, but like I don't necessarily proactively set up meetings or like try to push, like I'm not really trying to push anything forward right now because I got my movie coming out and I've got these other things that are in the air, you know, and so what I really want to do is be writing, but I'm just not.
Yeah.
So like I think I just need to start scheduling writing time for myself and just like that's the time to write. Nothing else is happening in that time. I'm just writing, you know, whether it's 7 to 8 or, you know, 5 to 6 if I can get up that early, well, whatever it is, like just have that block where I'm doing my creative work, you know?
A last piece of advice is like just take some time and think about who do you know and who do you want to work with rather than responsive or reacting to people. It's like, who do you want to send that email out to? Because you're receiving the emails, but who should you try to woo? And that's also kind of fun too. But I know we have to go. And I want to say to everyone, you can always send us a question, comment, or suggestion to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. Or if you like the show, you can leave us a review on iTunes. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at MMIH Podcast, YouTube at Making Movies is Hard Podcast. Please check out the International Screenwriters Association. We like them a lot. They're an organization designed to connect writers with filmmakers through the programs they offer. They publish your log line. They have contests. They have lots of great things. Head on over to www.networkisa.org to sign up for free today. Special thanks to Marc Smolowitz for coming on the show. Thanks to Bianca Beirudi and the whole BAMMS BAMS team for making this happen. Thanks to our editor, Jeff Reimuth, for doing the editing. We love you, Jeff. Thanks to our producer, Eric Toms, for being awesome. We love you, Eric. Thanks to all of you for listening. We love you. And talk to y'all next week.
Whatever. Jeff, you can make that work. You don't have to include the BAMS thing if you don't want to.